Welcome back to Total Disclosure, everybody. My name's Tyler, and I'm your host. I want to say thank you and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Today's Black Friday, and I love the holiday season. Just came back from Best Buy myself. Got the podcast a couple of gifts for Christmas. Wink, wink. But today we have such a good show for you planned. I've been very excited about talking to John Kirwin, and the more I researched down what he is interested in, the more I find myself asking questions. And I think that's the great part of this community is it's never a dull day, right? So maybe you don't agree with someone here, maybe you don't agree with someone there, and that's okay. If you allow yourself to have the conversation, though, I promise you'll come out on the other side at least more open-minded, and that's what we're here to do. As always, guys, make sure to leave the podcast a 5-star rating on whether it is Spotify or Apple Podcasts that you're listening on, and we are uploading more to YouTube, so make sure to like, share, subscribe. If you want to support the channel further, you can either remember on YouTube or Patreon. Same benefits, same stuff, yearly gift, early access to interviews like the one we're about to do, priority questions when we start rolling that out, which will be about next month. And then, like I said, you'll have the RSS feed that is exclusive to you. So without further ado, let's bring him in, the man, the myth, John Kirwin, author of The Conspiracy Theorist Survival Guide.
Making a blanket statement to cover the entire UFO phenomenon over the past 20 years.
John,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
Excellent intro. Great to be with you, Tyler, and your audience as well.
Yeah, and listen, like I said, when you reached out to me, I was like, I don't know if this is something that I want to do. Now, it wasn't you. It was like, is this going to line up with what I do, like UFOs, cover-ups? And then I started thinking to myself, why am I asking these questions? Of course it's going to line up. Of course they're going to, of course it is all. It doesn't matter. I've had on more people recently that the community people reached out to me, said, don't have them on. Don't, it's going to ruin your reputation. And those shows end up being the ones that have the most listeners, the most views, and it's wild to me. So I'm done asking those questions, and I'm ready to just have conversations. And before we get started, just maybe for our audience who doesn't know, you give us a brief overview of who you are and what led you to having this conversation with me today.
Yeah. Well, that was, you said a lot there. Just to kind of put it into a nutshell, what we seek to do today is just kind of explore a little bit different topic than we normally do as truthers. We're all on this journey to try to figure out how the Matrix is bamboozling us. The UFO, we're in soft disclosure right now. I mean, they got Senate hearings with guys saying, we're in possession of biologicals. And the senator's like, you mean human remains? And he's like, no. And they also are stating they have off-world technology openly.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's just a crescendo of sightings and all of this stuff. They just had a bunch of ETs visit this village in Peru, tried to cut this girl's face off, and then, it's just everywhere. And so there's also a Senate, one of the senators submitted a bill to force disclosure within the next 12 months.
Yeah,
I don't know
Chuck Schumer.
It's
what's being called the Schumer Amendment, which would essentially, it would call for these private aerospace companies and anyone who has or is working on this stuff to be able to there's like this grace period where you can go to the government. You don't have to turn it over, but you have to tell them where you got it, how you retrieved it, what you're working on it, what's the process, and there will be government oversight. So I think if that bill passes, then we're looking at a completely different playground, right? So right now, yes.
Well, the power structure obviously has decided to flip the switch. I mean, this stuff doesn't just happen because of public pressure or whatever. They're ready to bring ETs out, Project Bluebeam, however they're going to do it. I think they're backed into a corner, and they're going to need to play the ET card, you know, and have a big attack and another bioweapon release, whatever they're going to do, right? So, but this is only one of a number of different conspiracies. You know, you might have found out NASA's lying. Okay, the moon landing's fake. ISS guys are on wires. You may have found out the Earth is not a spinning ball. It's actually a flat stationary plane. You may have found out the Mandela effect is real. You may be in the Patriot movement. Find out the government is all companies. It's all Title 18, deprivation of rights under color of law. It's all fake. Whatever the rabbit hole you fell into, it could be just one. It's enough to bring division between you and your spouse like it has me and hundreds of people that I personally interacted with. So what we're talking about is not so much the UFO phenomenon. We already know that. It's the people that are important to us in our life that don't know. And not only do they don't know, they don't want to know. Mm-hmm. So now you can't just ditch your family. You could ditch your friends, even if they're lifelong friends, but if you're married to somebody and they're a full-blown normie, or your kids, you got a problem, okay? So that was my journey. And so I've been a content creator for the last 7 years on YouTube at Wake Up or Else. And, I mean, it's universal, okay? If you start to question officialdom, you're going to go into a crap storm that is like the Spanish Inquisition. It's hell on earth. And that's what the book is about. It's not trying to convince you conspiracy theories are happening. It's a book written for the conspiracy theorist. You already know it's happening. And it's about, now what? How do I deal with the pushback, the isolation, being disrespected by spouse and children and friends and church families, being pushed out, isolated, rejected, mocked, and you have no recourse because they tell you, I don't want to talk about it. Understand, the central characteristic of a normie is they don't want to know.
Yeah, they put this wall up, and it's right. Like, it's whatever they can see, touch, and feel, right? That's tangible to them. But going beyond that is it's too much ontological shock for them to, and those are the people who keep their, those are the people when disclosure finally, when a full hard disclosure happens, or when one of these conspiracies isn't a conspiracy anymore and it's truth to the public, in terms of the public, it becomes truth, right? JFK assassination, that the CIA definitely had a hand to play in it. There's too much evidence to suggest the fact that was so, that even if Lee Harvey Oswald was part of the execution of JFK, he was a CIA asset at the time, right? And so no matter what you play it, so when you start going down these rabbit holes, yes, of course, then you start wanting to talk about it with the people that are closest to you. And, you know, to veer off here a little bit, I'm friends with Kevin Day, very good friends with Kevin Day. And he was on the USS Nimitz when they saw, he is the guy that vectored Commander Fravor's flight to see the Tic Tac. He's the radar operator who raised the first flag and said, these things are dropping from a minimum of 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second. And there's, at one point, he said there were raining UFOs on his radar, right? The Tic Tac flight happens. Fravor comes back. That's 2004. From 2004 to 2017, Kevin Day is basically pushed out of the Navy as a laughing stock for wanting to raise awareness that these things are out there, and there's a safety of flight issue, and he wanted to be more safe. These things are out there, we got to avoid them, or whatever. They're there, clearly we have seen them, we have videos of them, they're there. And the Navy literally would make fun of him, laugh, and they laughed him into retirement. And then he lost his wife. He lost his life. He became an alcoholic. He drifted. He almost took his life. All of that happened between 2004 and 2017. So that's a prime example of what people face when they speak out.
That's exactly it. It's shocking. It's not shocking. It's very evident to me that this pushback, let's call it, persecution, isolation, is almost universal. Now, like with spouses, I've seen that the majority of spouses, okay, you're going along, both are, we call them normies, and that's not a derogatory term. The unconvinced name themselves normie. Like my daughter one time said, "Dad, I just wish you were normal."
Yeah.
Well, if you look up what normal means, normal means conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected. Well, then I looked up conforming, and it means complying with the rules. Okay, so
falling in line?
Well, the quintessential characteristic of a truther, if we can use that term, is that you found out something. Like you were just sailing along like everybody else, and all of a sudden God taps you on the shoulder and he's like, "Hey, did you notice that that's fake?" For me, it was I found out the Federal Reserve wasn't federal. Well, here's what happens next. And this is almost universal too. You intuitively say, well, if that's not true, what else isn't true? And that's when you get converted. That's the moment of conversion, if I could say it that way, where you begin to question officialdom on the large scale. And I don't know how they do it. It's kind of, the matrix is a physical construct, but it's also metaphysical. It's a bewitchment. And they get you to shut your brain off. And it's like you're encased in stone and you're like an automaton. You don't question officialdom. And this act of questioning is the waking up. And so now you start looking at things with a new set of eyes, and you start turning over rocks. And what you realize is almost everything is fake. And you're freaked out. And then your spouse, your kids, your friends, they're just doing life. Okay. They're doing their happy life. And they look at you like you become obsessed. But, people that are in a burning building should be obsessed. All right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me just pick up on one other thing, Tyler. What you were saying before.
Go.
You were talking about the people, like right now it's raining red pills, right? I mean, I don't know how the normie is going to reconcile their worldview with the things that they're finally pressing past their bubble, right? So, for instance, if you look at the data sphere, all of the psychology today, all of the media is telling you that it's a conspiracy if you suggest that there is a secret cabal running the world, like the 13 families and all of this stuff is complete nonsense, right? Yet, now you have Donald Trump running, saying, if you vote for me, I'll eliminate the deep state.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a huge, and then you got all these normies that like Trump, but now Trump is a complete conspiracy theorist kook, right? Because he's saying all the things we've been saying. Another one is Bilderberg. Bilderberg was a conspiracy theory for years. Well, now they have a website. Now they got a website.
Can you elaborate on that?
Bilderberg is a hotel where all of the world leaders met once a year to plan and strategize how they're going to run the world from behind the scenes. It's the deep state. And we were told Bilderberg meetings don't exist. It's a conspiracy theory. If you go look it up, you could still find millions of articles saying that. But now they were forced into the open and they have a website, BilderbergMeetings.org, I think it is.
Interesting.
So what unfortunately, though, the disciples asked Jesus, they said, what will the end days be like? And out of all the things that Jesus highlighted to answer that question, he said, it'll be as the days of Noah. And then he described one of the characteristics of the days of Noah. It was people will not have a clue. He said they will be eating and drinking and given in marriage right up until the time the flood came. So I don't really believe when these people that are normies who love Trump, they see Trump saying he'll eliminate the deep state, but if you ask them, they'll mock you if you believe there's a secret cabal running things. Or Bilderberg, they'll see him talking about, like Elon Musk called into the World Global Council. It's world government uncloaking in front of us. And Elon Musk is like, I don't think it's a good idea that we have world government. If you ask the normies, hey, is there such a thing as world government? They'll say that's ridiculous. So it's just like Jesus said. The normies are going to march right into the COVID camps. They're going to march right into the mark of the beast with their eyes wide open.
And they'll have smiles on their face doing it.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and we really did see during COVID how quickly the government can shut this shit down.
Oh, yeah.
And it honestly, it frightened me. It frightened me to my core. Not the COVID, and we're probably going to get demonetized just for even mentioning this. The COVID was not what scared me. What scared me is that the government could tell us who is essential and not essential. Right? So if you're a family and you run a small mom and pop convenience store, whatever it is, dry cleaning shop, hair cutting a salon, you were told you were not essential, and go home, shut the doors down, lock it up, go home. We just need 2 weeks, flatten the curve, then you can go back to your life. That 2 weeks turns into 6 months. Now all of a sudden, people lose their businesses, right? All because they were told they were not essential by a group of people who are the epitome of not essential.
No question.
So, yes, I think a lot of people over the pandemic started to wake up to the fact that this isn't right. It should not have been able to go down like that. I think with everything that's happening with the UFO disclosure process, I think a lot of people are starting to come around, but we still have this large group of people who they just want to, I don't know, exist. It's like, I at this point for me, it's like, I can't turn back. I've heard too much. I can't turn back.
Yeah, once you see, you can't unsee.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me. You before your awakening, let's call it, or your moment of conversion, as you called it, what were you doing? What were you just normie? With a family. What was your job? What did you do? What's your background?
I was a full-time pattern day trader, so I was day trading. And that's when I was in the financial markets, and I saw that the Federal Reserve wasn't federal. And I was like, this is like a white building in Washington. It's called the Federal Reserve, but it's actually it's owned by private foreign bankers, and it's a corporation in Puerto Rico. And I remember, looking back, it's sort of embarrassing, because it's so obvious now. But then it was a revelation that all of the people, like the governors and the senators and the congressmen, certainly they must know, right? So you go, wow, they're all lying. And then you just start to question officialdom. And I think the next thing I saw was 9/11. I think was a seminal moment for a lot of people because that was so obvious. And not only was 9/11 huge because you believed that there was government implementation, but it was the media. What got me was the media showed us the plane flying into the one side of the building, right? And then it comes out the other end for about 2 or 3 seconds before it snapped back. And in that 2 or 3 seconds, you can clearly see that the nose cone was completely intact. Okay, so one of the documentaries, they showed 2 or 3 commercial airliners that had bird hits, and the nose cone was crushed in completely. from
So
birds.
how do you pass through a metallic, like structured building?
It's an aluminum can going 500 miles an hour, and it's going to go into a solid structure built to withstand hurricane winds, solid steel and
steel
cement,
I-beams and everything,
all the way through to the other side, and not even a dent. When I saw that, I realized this is a complete hoax. And
wait a minute. So what are you saying happened? So do you think this plane was reinforced? Do you think that it was? Do you think that it wasn't a plane?
No planes. There's all different levels of theories, but I'm with the no plane theory for sure.
So missiles.
And we were shown CGI stuff, but what hit the things was, missiles, and then it was already wired with explosives. I mean, if you go listen to
there was a
architects for 9/11 Truth. There's like 2,000 of them. These guys are like, look, dude, I build these things and I tear them down. Okay, that's what I do for a living. I design these big buildings, I build them, and then we also tear them down. So what I'm telling you is, Building 7 was controlled demolition. Period. And they all signed affidavits.
Building 7 is, you can clearly see that is a controlled demolition.
Yeah.
It is so, and I believe Jesse not Jesse, Tyler Oliveira, he's a YouTuber. He talked to one of the chief of fire or whatever, and he is convinced that 9/11 wasn't not only an inside job but a false flag operation to get us to. I mean, there are so many. I mean, we look at George Bush Sr.'s ties into the Middle East, the Bush family and their association with not only Osama bin Laden, but the Middle East and their oil. We had a clear want and need for that oil, and we were going to do whatever was necessary to get it. And if that involved a false flag operation, then so be it. And that's what a lot of people think happened, is that it was a way to get us to go to war for the oil. Is that essentially where your head's at?
Yes, it was a lot of things. I mean, it was a 342-page document that was ready to go like 2 days later. So it was already created. And primarily it was to centralize power. That's where everything is moving, with not only all of the money being in the hands of a few, but the power is centralizing in a world government. So Patriot Act is designed to get us to willingly give up our freedoms. For security.
Yep, absolutely.
And it worked like a champ. I mean, you still hear it, if you try to exercise your First and Fourth Amendment rights in public with law enforcement, they'll always tell you, well, in this day and age with 9/11, we have to violate your rights. No, you don't, unless you want a tort claim.
Yeah, that's not how that should work. Listen, I get it. As a government, your duty is to the people to protect the people from threats, foreign and domestic, and to as the government, you're supposed to be working to make the everyday person's life easier and better. And, that's what your goals should be. It shouldn't be to line your own pockets and to say, fuck everybody else. That's what it's become with, these super PACs and lobbyists, and the government is essentially a business. It's a money laundering scheme at this point. I mean, look at Nancy Pelosi and other people with the inside day trading and all that. It's remarkable that they're allowed to get away with these things. And then to tell you you're not essential.
Nancy Pelosi's got like a $170,000 a year salary, and she's worth $150 million. I have a
Which
list
makes
of
no sense.
No, I've got a list of all the senators' net worths, and most of them are over 50 million.
Yeah, I have a close relationship with Congressman Burchett. He has been a real champion for the UFO topic, and
Uh-huh.
he's like one of the only people in Congress that I respect. You know, he may not always the some of his views I may not always agree with, but you know, him, Representative Luna, you know, these are the really the only people that in the government as of right now that I consider trustworthy, at least in the sense that, you know, they're trying to get this UFO topic off the ground and get it into the mainstream and, you know, get it talked about, because I think if we can get the UFO disclosure, that first domino tipped over, then I think a lot of stuff comes after that. And you know, you're a conspiracy theorist, a self-proclaimed conspiracy theorist. But you know, where do you stand on the UFO stuff? Because do you think that they're coming from other worlds? What's your insight into this whole thing?
Yeah, I've got a biblical worldview, so I look at everything through what has been revealed in the sacred writings. So
I like that.
I have a perspective that there is a personal God. He's not like the force be with you. God is all. We're a God. Everybody's God, and you know, there's just like a energy force or a consciousness that you can tap into, because that's not what the Bible teaches. And so you can do, you know, there are basically two kinds of people in the world: the people who believe the Bible and people that don't. So there's plenty of people that agree with me. So if you don't agree with me, that's fine. But that's the story I'm going with, and I've got plenty of empirical evidence to back it up. And I also have knowledge that is beyond knowledge. There's a scripture that says, "Let the peace of God, which passes understanding, keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus." And that word "passes knowledge" is the word epignosis. It means beyond knowledge. Okay, so you can know things like sixth sense, intuition, you know, deja vu, premonitions, visions. You're a complex being. You're not just a brain and a body. You have a soul, okay, mind, will, and emotions. You have a spirit, man. It's an eternal spirit that is able to communicate directly with God, bypassing your peanut brain. So God speaks to people in their spirit. It's not head talk, it's heart talk. And it's knowable, and it's consistent, and it's tangible. So a man with an experience is not at the mercy of a man with an argument. I could take down any atheist on empirical observations, evolution. I'll debate you on the facts, but when it's all said and done, you know, you can't take away meeting God in prayer every morning. You can't argue that away in any way. Okay, so
Right.
So what my view is of the UFO phenomenon is that it's exactly the same as that little picture that we were shown in kindergarten and all through school, where you got a monkey, and then the monkey's standing up a little more, and then he's a man, right? Monkey to the man picture.
Yep. So
Now,
evolution.
Do you believe in evolution, or do you believe in creationism?
So I'm a little different in the sense that I think that evolution does happen, and I think that's just a biological trait that that we have as species to adapt and overcome to the environment around us, right? And that sometimes takes generation and longevity. And you know, you might not have it, but you'll face the struggle, and then maybe your kids will be a little bit better at facing that struggle. I think that's a real thing, right? We see it in nature, but there's clearly intelligent design to the universe in some form or fashion. So I do believe that there is something beyond beyond us. I just don't know exactly what it is. And I'm open to other people's experiences, because maybe it'll give me insight into some of my own, right? And I'm still on a journey of trying. I know there's something. I know we're not just pointless meat sacks on this pale blue dot. There's too much intelligent design to this universe, into the cosmos that we can see, that it just wouldn't make sense that we would be here and then gone. We see the universe recycles, and I think our soul or consciousness, I think that is tangible. I think that is something.
All right, well, let's play around with that for a second, because you said a lot. Evolution does happen, is what you said, and you used the term adaptation. You also mentioned survival of the fittest, and then this one I'd like to really ask you about. We see it in nature. Okay, so what you're saying is that there is archaeological evidence of transitional species. So can you name one species, transitional species, that's been found in the strata that's not just an adaptation, like Darwin's finches, right? Darwin pointed to these finches that had different beaks, but that's an interspecies adaptation. That's not a transitional species. So you go from a frog to a horse, you have to have half frog, half horse, right? So can you name one transitional species?
Damn, I guess you can't. Well, when you put it that way, I see where you're going with this, and your logic, you're using logic against me here. Well, I guess what I mean is, wow, I guess maybe I'm falling into something that I was taught.
All right, well, if that's exactly what you're doing. I saw some people go onto college campuses and they asked the same questions to the students, and they couldn't come up with an answer. Anyway, what they did was they deferred to their teachers, and basically they were saying, surely the professors know, and I trust them. So then the guys went to the professors and they asked them the same thing. Can you produce one example of a transitional species in the strata? And the professor goes, oh, I can give you hundreds. And he goes, well, all I'm asking for is one. And then he was hemming and hawing. And when it came down to it, they couldn't produce one either. Okay. So
I guess I'm not alone.
Evidence supports our position. The archaeological evidence supports creationism, not evolution.
Well, where I was going with it was that even if evolution, I guess, or adaptation is my way of looking at it. Like, for instance, the closer you are to the equator, people's skin got darker, right? To mitigate the sun. Now, that is an adaptation to the environment around you, right? So it's not a species. It's
no, it isn't right. I don't agree. I don't agree at all. I believe it's, because I have a biblical worldview, I believe that it was a function of the fall and the Tower of Babel and all other kinds of influences. I mean, if you're in the sun, you're going to be darker. And so anyway, so what happens with evolution is the evidence is so overwhelming that evolution can't be supported, with the evidence, that even I think it was 1999 International Evolutionary Conference, they had to admit, it was when they discovered they mapped the genome. Okay, so they got down to the very tiny molecular level of the gene, and they were expecting something very simple, because if you agree with evolution, it basically defies entropy, where everything becomes less and less complex over time. So what it's basically saying is you started from a simple one cell and then became more complex. So that means if you get down to the gene, it should be very simple. What they found in the gene was, imagine a little city block, okay? And you got a shoe store, a meat market, you got a restaurant, and blah, 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 and there's like 20 stores on each corner, on each line of the block, going all the way around. Highly specialized functionality on one gene. Well, that means if it started out complex, there has to have been a creator, because you can't you can't evolve into that. It was started that way. So they had to abandon evolution and they then transition to what you said, intelligent design. And what that means is panspermia. No,
Panspermia.
panspermia,
Yes.
which is basically pushing the problem off to some distant star, and now we've been seeded by alien life. Well, then you still have the same problem because the aliens had to come out of the primordial
Come from
ooze,
somewhere.
which is
Right there.
statistically ridiculous. It's impossible.
You don't
It's
think
not
that there's even
improbable.
an inkling for seeding life?
No, because you have to, if you have Word on your computer, Microsoft Word is a software program. You take one line of code out and it won't work at all. So you
Right.
can't start with one cell and then evolve into a complex thing, because you have to have the whole code to begin with for it to become that thing. You
Okay.
can't go
I see
from
where you're
A
going.
to Z. You have to
I
start
get
at
it.
Z.
I
Right?
listen. And you know what? You've opened my eyes to that. That is a very very compelling argument. I will say
All right,
that.
so basically, all that to say, the alien narrative, which is being pushed through 100 different movie scenarios, like Prometheus, where they go to the distant planet to find the engineers who are the ones that created us. No, that's the same narrative as the monkey to the man, which is a lie. They want you to believe that there's no God, and so they're going to convince the world that we were created or engineered by ETs. And what I'm telling you is the Bible doesn't teach that. The Bible tells you that God created you in the womb. You were knit together in the womb by God. He is your creator. And we weren't created by aliens. God created Adam and Eve in the garden. That's the story I'm going with.
Okay. And let's play devil's advocate here.
Sure.
Right? Why would, if God was this all-powerful being, right?
Yep.
And omnipotent, just whatever. Why would he allow the forbidden fruit in the first place? Why would he allow his creation to be corrupted?
Right. So one day I was in New York and this guy was asking me for money and I gave him some and then I told him about the Lord and, trying to win his soul. And he was like, well, if God's all powerful, can he make a rock so heavy that he can't lift it up? And I didn't have the answer. I didn't have the answer. So I was asking God, all right, God, I need to know the answer to this. So one day the Lord spoke to me and he said, the answer is that God, the Father, makes the rock that's so heavy that he can't pick it up. But then God the Son can pick it up.
Interesting.
All right. So in answer to your question, which is the age-old question, if God's good, why does he allow evil, right? Because if God's all-powerful and he allows little girls to be raped, then he obviously isn't powerful enough to stop it. Mm-hmm. Or if he's all-loving and he allows little girls to be raped, he must not be all-loving because he allows the girls to be raped. So the answer is that this side of eternity, there is no answer. Okay, there's only small answers. One of them is free will. So you've got a God that creates Adam and Eve in the garden, and he places his tree of the knowledge of good and evil in there. And there's a whole narrative on why he did that, which we won't get into, but it's basically like, hey, I'm God and you're not. Let's keep things like in perspective here. I'm going to let you run this thing, but when it comes down to it, I'm still God and I created you and that gives me a claim on you. No excuses, no apologies. And in many cases, no full explanation. It's a take it or leave it offer. Okay. And you don't like that, then you leave it. But you don't get the benefits of the promise of Jesus that says, I'll put your name in the Lamb's Book of Life. So when you draw your last breath, I'll be your advocate and you'll go to heaven. Okay. I don't believe in heaven. Okay. I'm not here to convince anybody.
So, and that's interesting. So what do you think about people that don't like, because obviously there's many religions. There's many practicing religions across the world. And so what do you think happens to people that aren't Christian?
Right. Well, there are a lot of different faiths and religions, and basically Jesus was either the only true religion or he was a lying madman, because he basically pushed himself off as being God in the flesh. And he said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father except through me. And there's other passages like, neither is there any other name given under heaven by which men must be saved. And then in the Old Testament, it says, God turns the wicked into hell and all the nations that forget God. So it's not good news. And people get really ticked off at God. And I understand, the way God runs his universe, it's really hard to accept. And I'm sorry for your problems. But like I said, I met the guy, and he's the nicest guy I ever met, and I'm running with him. You can come too. But if you want to be ticked off at him, then you're on your own when you draw your last breath. See, I need that salvation piece. Okay. So all this stuff that doesn't add up for me, I just put it in a box. Like I don't hold him in derision. What I do is I ascribe my inability to understand the difficult questions to my peanut brain. Okay. Try to explain how a Craig supercomputer works to an ant. Let me explain it to you, ant. And the ant's looking at you, and even if you had 1 trillion centuries, you couldn't explain how the thing works to the ant because he doesn't have the capacity. So it may be that you can't probably, even if God sat you down and tried to explain it to you, it would bounce off your little peanut brain. And so you have to come by faith to some degree. I only believe in what I see. Okay. Have a good chance when you take your last breath, bro.
Right. That's that's funny. So let's move on. So let's talk about flat Earth because you brought it up earlier.
Yeah.
Listen, there is a lot
You're a glutton for punishment, Tyler. You really.
Yeah, man. I'm really here on this one. So there's been so much turmoil with flat Earth, and listen, I really like. There's one thing about the idea. Now, I was watching Tyler Oliveira, and again, he was investigating flat Earth, and who's the guy that is like really outspoken, and he's like not the de facto like leader of flat Earth, but like kinda.
I don't know. Like I just had Flat Earth Dave on my channel a couple days ago.
Is that who it is? He's like the bald guy.
Yeah, he's making a lot of noise. Eric Dubé is probably noted as one of the leaders initially. Anyway, he brought a lot of interest to this topic, and it's nothing new.
I think it's Flat Earth Dave that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I just had him on my channel a couple days ago.
Well, maybe you could put me in touch with him, and
sure.
But listen, so he says something that I find to be really, really fascinating. And so the typical flat Earth map, I wish I could pull it up. I wish I had time to do that right now. But basically what he's explaining to Tyler is, he shows him the concentric ring, the map, and talks about it. And he's like, okay, so if we're here, right? If we're in the middle and it was created for us, right? Beyond the ice wall, there's these other. Well, he started lining it up, and he said that's extra, and then it's extra terrestrial, and he said that some of these craft that we're seeing could be coming from beyond the outer ring, and we're calling them. We're calling them extraterrestrials or aliens because they come from beyond like our inner circle, our where we live, right? But it's still part of our world. Like they're still from part of our world. It's just they're beyond that ice wall ring. Now maybe you can explain that to me better.
Right. Well, if you if you embrace flat Earth, then it will dramatically change your perspective of UFOs, that they're coming, over hundreds of light years, because the Earth is flat and stationary with a dome over it. And so there is no space to flat earthers. It's all a fabrication of NASA. And it's very clear that what we're being told is not what our eyes are seeing. And as far as the Earth being flat, if it's round, why is it flat? Okay, because you could see lighthouses from 50 miles away in a clear night, and all of the math is the same. It's ridiculous to suggest that the math is wrong. We're using NASA's 8 inches per mile squared, and all 4 of the main curvature calculators on the internet, which are guys from MIT and all the top math, they all agree. Okay, so the math is not incorrect. So basically, if you're 50 miles away, there should be about 1,700 feet of curvature
of drop, basically.
Right. So I
curvature.
did a thing on the Chicago skyline. You could see it in its entirety from the opposite shore of Lake Michigan. But I used the video Rob Skiba did where he rented a boat to dispel the idea that it's atmospheric lensing or some mirage, because he filmed it from one side to the other, and you could see the skyline the whole time, which all of recorded history tells us that wouldn't have been the case if it was anything atmospheric. Plus, atmospheric actually supports our position because it would cause the image you're seeing to bend down towards the Earth, not projected up. A superior mirage is very rare. You have to have very specific atmospheric conditions to have a superior mirage where it actually projects the image up higher. Well, you can see the Chicago skyline 24/7, basically, if it's clear. So it isn't going around corners. Okay, the image of the skyline, what we're being asked to believe is the entire image of the skyline is being projected around 1,600 feet of curvature and then coming to our eyes. It's going around corners. Okay, the answer is no. All of recorded history says no. The math even says no. And the guy riding across the lake with his camera rolling says no. So it's not atmospheric. Okay. So the only other objection you can have is 2 things. My math is wrong. That's no, because all of the MIT calculators that have been online for 10 years disagree with you. And then the last one is that we don't have the actual height above elevation for the observer and the object, which I also did. I got the sea level for Lake Michigan. I added about 8 feet for the guy on a boat. So I have the exact level above sea level of the observer and the exact sea level of the Sears building, which is what the guy's GPS was tagged to. So then we have the exact distance. So I have the exact distance, the height above sea level for both objects. And I show the visual of the fact that you could still see 3/4 of the building from 40 miles away, 37 nautical miles. Now, you only should have seen about the little very tippy top of it from 40 miles, and you can see 3/4 of the building. Okay, so if it's not the math, it's not atmospheric, it's not the heights are wrong, the only thing left you could say is either it's photoshopped and I'm lying, which you'd have to prove, okay? So if it's not that, then the only thing you can say is, well, it's flat there, but it's not flat everywhere else. But that's not true either, because you could do this anywhere you want. I was at Myrtle Beach, and I got Google Earth or whatever, and I saw that where we were in North Myrtle Beach, and there was a hotel about 40 miles down the beach, and I got my binoculars, I could see the bottom of the hotel. You can do it everywhere. So my question to you is, if the Earth is round, why is it flat? There is no curve. Where's the curve? Because if it's 27,000 miles around, and NASA tells you it's 8 inches per mile squared, there should be measurable curvature, and you can't find it anywhere. Astrophysicists are coming forward that are seeing this, and they're like, "This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The Earth is flat. It's ridiculous." And they start looking into it, and they're like, "This is very intriguing."
Why? So I guess the biggest question people would have is, why lie about such a thing?
Monkey to the man. Why put the monkey to the man in front of you? Because they're all Freemasons and they don't want you to believe in God. They work for the devil. They're Luciferian. and they don't like God. They think the devil's the good guy, and he got a raw deal, and he's coming back to save them. But they're in for a rude awakening. Isaiah 14, they're going to say, is this not the one that caused nations to tremble? So the real deal is that the people in charge, going back to all the way to Galileo, are Freemasons. They all got their rings and their little Mason compass thing and everything they do. And they're basically pushing a narrative of the monkey to the man proves there's no God. You evolved from monkeys. There's no God. The earth is a spinning ball. I used to believe this. It was spinning gases, and it spun around for billions of years until it hardened, and then clouds formed. Okay, well, that means there's no God involved. The Bible, Genesis says God created the earth. And then it says, and he placed a firmament in the sky. The word, it means a hard, impenetrable barrier. Okay? That's what it means. He put a hard, impenetrable barrier in the sky.
Okay. So that's the dome that you talk about?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can't get out?
No.
So there's nothing. What's on the outside of that dome?
Well, what it says is there's waters below, there's waters above. And when you look at the pictures that you are given from NASA, which means deception in Hebrew, and their sigil is a snake tongue, they give you these Photoshop pictures of planets, but when you look at it with a Nikon Piece 360 or whatever it's called, they look like flickering Christmas lights that are underwater. That's what they actually look like.
I've always wondered why the sky looks the way it looks. Like it looks almost like, and I'm not, listen, I'm not sold on flat Earth. I'm going to be up front.
Why not? Why aren't you sold on flat Earth? It's flat.
I'm not convinced yet. And listen, it's nothing against you. It's right. It's nothing against you.
It's a hard pill to swallow, but if you know that water always finds its level, the water's always level. The water doesn't curve around balls, especially a spinning ball. Look, if the Earth is a spinning ball,
they argue that gravity keeps it there.
Okay, so how does gravity keep 8 octillion tons of water on a spinning ball, but the butterfly can effortlessly flitter up from the ground? Is it selectively strong? Is it because if it's strong enough to hold the water on a spinning ball, because centrifugal force would throw the water off. It's not a magical ball, okay?
Right.
So it's spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. That would throw off anything on the ball, but gravity is holding it on there, okay? That must be pretty strong. So how does the butterfly flitter up from the ground, or the birds or the bees? They just, how does that happen?
Like I said, that's a very good, that's a good comeback. And I like this discourse. Like I like that kind of stuff because it does make me think. And maybe, hey, if I'm proven wrong 100%, and all of a sudden it comes out that we have been lied to, I would accept it. I would, because I mean, what else do you have at that point? You have to accept it. But I have the hardest time with grappling the why. And I guess you talked about it, Freemasonry. I mean, we look at Washington, and Washington was built in like a Masonic way, with there is a lot of cryptic evidence for it. So do you think Freemasonry is behind a lot of the stuff? Do you think that a lot of government?
Well, I would like to make the observation that Y is a very common exit ramp. Okay, in other words, the real problem with flat Earth is your pride. Now, I'm not saying you, because you're actually got grace and you're in control of your triggered response. You're not acting like a normie, which a lot of truthers act like normies when it comes to flat Earth. So I appreciate that. Yeah. But you are trying to put off the empirical observations, which are searingly obvious, to this question that is maybe unanswerable. And basically there's an insinuation there. Since I can't answer why it's happening, then I don't have to accept the empirical evidence. That's what's happening, even if you don't realize it.
So my comeback would be, so every airline pilot in the world is in on this?
No. No, most of them, many of them are not in on it, but a lot are, many are, and that's because if they say anything, they'll lose their jobs. But my point is why it's happening isn't proof that it isn't happening. That's what I'm saying.
I agree with you. I agree with you there, 100%.
Can't give it any credence because scientism is either Hail Mary, guesses or virtually like premeditated lies packaged as proof by guys in white lab coats. Science is observable, it's repeatable, it's verifiable. Okay, so what I can verify is not what the Hubble telescope sends me or anything NASA tells me. What I can verify is that if I go out anywhere on this place that we live, anywhere, with a telescope, and a guy 50 miles away with a mirror or some experiment that you set up yourself, or just observing an object using Google Maps, whatever, you can do this yourself. And you can check the math, 8 inches per mile squared. So 2 miles would be 16, 3 miles would be 32, right? And so the curvature measurements, and then you just look. You'll see the building. You'll see it, and then you'll go, well, that building should be obscured behind 1,600 feet of curvature. I can see the whole thing. Let's go over and do it over here. And everywhere you go, your eyes will be telling you something different than Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye the Science Guy. And so then you have a decision to make. You have to decide if you believe what you're told, and you're going to have to swallow your pride and have one good despair and get it over with like the rest of us. Because what's basically happening underneath 90% of the pushback is pride. Because what you're saying, I'm not saying you, I'm saying if you're saying to yourself, if this is true, I'd have to be really stupid and I'm smart. Well, you're dealing with masters of illusion and a lifetime of indoctrination. Okay, these guys are really good at lesser magic.
They do.
And man, they are like, they're working directly with Satan. And they pulled the wool over all of our eyes, but there's a great awakening taking place.
There is a lot of evidence as to suggest that, we look at Operation, what was the name of it? I can't remember. Well, yes, it had to do with paperclip, but there was a lot of occult in NASA. There was a lot of rituals being taking place, and people hanging out with the likes of Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard, and there was just a lot of weird stuff going on. And then Bohemian Grove and places like that, you start asking yourself questions like what are these people into? If you have all the money in the world, what do you do from there?
Power, control. You want people to worship you. That's what Satan said. Satan said, I will be like the Most High. I will ascend to the hills of the north. I will walk among the stones of fire. He was like the right-hand man to God. He was like a super dude.
Well, wasn't he God's favorite son?
Well, it says that his body was made of instruments. So apparently he was the worship leader of heaven. I mean, this dude was rolling up there. And I guess he looked in the mirror too much, and he got lifted up in pride, and he started thinking, all these people follow me up here. Why do I have to worship God? I'm going to get these people to worship God. So that's what he got cast down for, because it's like the garden thing where God put the tree in there. He said, look, I'm going to create you and make you awesome and give you all kinds of nobility and power, but just let's keep this in perspective here. You are a created being. I have no beginning and no end. I have all power, all knowledge, all wisdom, all my divine perfections of love, righteousness, holiness are all infinite. You could never exhaust what I am. You, on the other hand, had a creation date. Prior to me creating you, you didn't exist. Just keep that in perspective. Right. So He didn't want to do that, and so he decided to try to overthrow God, and he got the boot.
Right.
That's
You know,
that's the story.
You know what's funny is I'm very good friends with Mark Pellegrino, who plays Lucifer who played Lucifer on Supernatural, and he got really into the stories and whenever I would have him on, we'd talk about like the theological stuff,
Yeah.
like when it comes to Lucifer, and like there's a lot people don't really understand. Like some people don't even know that Lucifer was an angel. Right? Like he wasn't always this. He was at one time God's favorite, right? Or God's right hand man, whatever you want to say. And was cast down because, yes, I think there's two kind of versions, right? Where he became too prideful and wanted to not overthrow God, but become God, not become God, but be worshipped like him. And then is it right that he did not like that they were being told to bow to the human race?
So, say that again.
So after God created man, he told the angels or the heaven and angels in heaven that they were to be in service of these people, these lesser beings, as Lucifer thought, because they were lesser. They weren't as, they were what he called warring apes, right? So he didn't want to bow down to humanity, but he wanted to have humanity worship him. And
yeah, that's for sure. There's a scripture in Hebrews that says, are they, speaking of angels, it says, are they not all ministering spirits sent forth for the inheritors of salvation? And so there's some serious animosity there with Lucy. He doesn't like humans because they got what he lost.
Right.
He wants to be us.
Right. And that's why he's now hell-bent on corruption, right? Corrupting the human soul. And that's, at least what I know. So it's really interesting. Now, you brought up the Mandela effect earlier, and you have it looks like you've gotten a little bit further into it. Now, what most people think about the Mandela effect is like the Berenstain Bears, right? That, it was spelled a different way. And that's what they know the Mandela effect as, right? Like something that they knew was true, but when they go back and look is now not. And they know that it was true. And this originated by the really like this fake, not fake, but people believe that Nelson Mandela died in prison, but he didn't. So that's where the Mandela name comes from, right?
Yep. Yeah, and a lot of people try to suggest it was named by Fiona Broome, who's a witch, therefore it's not true. But if the devil came and told you the sky was blue, would you then not believe the sky is blue because the devil told you it was?
That's an interesting thought.
All right, so let me lay this out. I've been doing this for 7 years. This is all I talk about for 7 years. Pretty much my whole life is the Mandela effect. Specifically, the things that are changing in our reality include the Bible. So coming from a ministry background and a biblical worldview, I'm dealing with the fact that the scriptures are included in the things that are changing, which
that's wild.
Makes a lot of people very upset because they're misinterpreting a handful of scriptures that they believe teach the Bible couldn't be subject to an external attack like this. However, Daniel 7:25, Amos 8:11, 2 Thessalonians 2, and Revelation 13 and Revelation 22 all teach you that this was foretold in advance. So I'm coming from strong biblical authority that you're wrong and I'm right, okay? And I have the testimony of millions of people, which can't be brushed aside as people that are just crazy. Yes. We have 7 different types of proof. And the Bible doesn't teach that it can't change. It teaches that the Word of God can't change.
The word,
And
yes,
the
the Word
Scripture
of God
and the
is,
Word of God are not the same thing.
they
So
are
without
not.
getting into a lot of detail, that's the premise of why it can happen, and God's not a liar. The devil doesn't have that much power, John. Well, of course he doesn't. He's a defeated foe. He's a dog on a leash. However, there was an account in Job where the devil came before God and had a deep debate with him. And what God ended up telling the devil is all that Job has is in your power. So the devil doesn't have that much power unless God gives it to him, which on occasion he does. Okay, and this is one of those occasions. Read Revelation 13. It says, speaking of the Antichrist, he is given power and permission to wage war against the saints and prevail against them. So I can assure you that this is happening, and God's not a liar. God is still on the throne. He's still all powerful, and the devil is still defeated. But Amos 8:11 clearly states, God said, I will, in the last days, God says, I will send a famine in the land, but not a famine of bread. It'll be a famine of the word. Men will seek the word and will not be able to find it. They will travel to the north, the south, the east, and the west, but they will not find the word. Well, how could that be? In modernity, we have the word on flash drives. It's everywhere. It's happening. It's an end time sign and wonder, and it's happening right under the nose of the church.
And it's easier now because, oh my God, that's crazy. That's a crazy thought. So
crazy.
Well,
okay, so let me just break it down.
Do you think someone's behind it?
What's that?
So is someone? Does someone have access to a time machine and is going back, or is this more biblical?
We don't really know. I mean, Enoch nailed it in Enoch chapter 80, verse 2. He says, in the last days, all things on the earth will alter and will be out of their time. Okay, so that describes it perfectly.
I mean, so is what you're saying is we're living through that right now?
Oh, yeah, it's totally happening. I mean, there's thousands.
I mean, the world is on fire.
But there's thousands of channels on all the platforms talking. Just put Mandela effect into TikTok or YouTube, or YouTube you'll get.
Oh, I know. I see it all the time. I see
the algorithm is going to point you to debunking sites. But if you go to Rumble, BitChute, TikTok, you'll get people like my channel. My channel is Wake Up or Else, all one word, on YouTube. It's like over 100 videos.
Yeah, I'll have it in the link for everyone to click. So,
all right, so
basically, in the description below.
Your name is Tyler. All right, so let's say you wake up one morning and your name is Skyler. Now there's an S on the front, SK. Now it sounds the same, but it's not the same. All right, so you're totally freaked out. All of your bank statements say Skyler. Your birth certificate, your driver's license, your credit cards, everything in the data sphere is telling you your name has not only been is Skyler, it's always been Skyler. All the way back to your yearbook, it's Skyler. Okay?
Right.
So you go to the doctor and you don't have a brain tumor, you don't have mental illness, right? My question to you is, would you consider that experience an unexplainable supernatural phenomenon, yes or no?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, by saying yes, what you're doing is you're testifying that you believe that the human memory is extremely reliable when it comes to vivid memories. Okay. Because in other words, you're like, I don't care what the data sphere says. I know what my name is, bro.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yes.
You can't shake you off of what you know. Well, that's your human memory being reliable with vivid memories. Okay, so you're willing to go against, all the rational arguments. Oh, I can clear this up, John. You're just misremembering. You're just confusing the Platter's peanut guy with the Monopoly guy. Really? Really? Do you know that? Is that a fact or is that your hypothesis? Because I believe differently. Don't tell me what my belief is.
Right.
Okay. I don't take edicts from people, especially when they haven't lifted a finger to look into this. Okay. So you wake up and now your name's Skyler and you decide, okay, this is an unexplainable phenomenon. Now I come along And I say, Skylar, you're just misremembering. Now, what are you going to tell me?
No, I'm not. You're an idiot.
Thank you. That's our world.
Yeah.
Because that's what millions, according to my research, it's millions of people are now claiming that they've woken up to this. They've reluctantly conceded that this is happening, even though it seems irrational. It's more irrational.
What, that their names are changing?
Oh, yeah, people's names are changing. Joel Osteen is now Joel Osteen. There's no L. Christopher Reeves is now Christopher Reeve. There's no S. Or no, it's now has an S. Sally Fields.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going with it. So,
how about this? Spell the word judgment. Spell the word judgment. There's a lot of words that are spelled wrong.
Okay. JUDGEMENT.
Wow, you wouldn't put most people put the E in there. I certainly did. Anyway, I could go through all the examples. Bragg's, apple cider, depends is now depend. You can depend on depends. Well, no, you can't. It's now depend. It's always been that way. And the difficult thing is when we see these things have changed, it hasn't changed like 2 years ago. And before that, it was the way it's always been the way it is now. Now,
right.
Here's where it gets really difficult for the unconvinced. Is our community observed 4 flip-flops. Okay. Flip-flops is where these things change and then they change back again. So Flintstones became Flintstones. And then about 8 months later, it changed back to Flintstones. And you got to understand, this is not Photoshop tricks because we went into the Walmarts. We do our research. Okay.
Right.
And we saw on the lunchbox, no T. Flintstones, which makes no sense because everything in the Flintstones is a rock, Barney Rubble, right. Mr. Slate, Bedrock, Flint. Okay, Flint is a stone. Well, all of a sudden there's no T. And now our entire community of hundreds of thousands or millions of people observed this thing change. We made videos about it, and then it changed back. So please explain to me how all of us witnessed that.
I did not know that happened. That is
Now,
insane.
if you don't have an explanation, what Sherlock Holmes said comes into play. If you eliminate all the suspects, the only one left, no matter how unlikely, is the murderer. So if you can't give me an explanation for about 10 different observations like the flip-flops, your answer is, I don't know, John. Then what happens is my testimony gets entered into the court of public opinion as evidence. And if you look up the term evidence, it means what is true and valid. Because what's happening is our testimony is like yours. Your name changes and you're very adamant about it. You're not moved by edicts and decrees, people telling you what you believe. No, I know my name. Okay. I know that the Monopoly guy always had a monocle and now he doesn't have one. He never had one in any of the, well, John, I can clear this up. Companies change their logos. Okay. Well, did you look into that? Like, did you actually go research the Monopoly guy all the way back to the original trademark? Because I did. And what I can tell you is it never had a monocle in any of the different never.
And that's one that hits me in my gut because I know
the dude had a monocle, right?
The dude had a monocle. I know it.
Exactly.
I know it. Listen, I don't tell this to many people. I had like this experience, and maybe it was like, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, where all of a sudden I went through these like radical changes where I was having like out of body experiences all of a sudden, and and I couldn't shut it off. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin to the fact where like I was questioning reality, the fabric of it, and it was scary. People told me I needed to go see somebody. That's when I developed my alcoholism, because I was drinking myself to normalcy. Ultimately, what led me to have you on is me going back and thinking about all this stuff. This weird change happened and I couldn't explain it. I didn't understand it. It was just one day, all of a sudden, I wasn't the same person, and it freaked me out to my core. And like I couldn't help but think, like, did something shift? Did we get put into a different universe? Like, interdimensional. I don't even know. Like, I started asking questions like that, and that's what inevitably led me down this path. Aside from seeing a UFO when I was younger, just have you ever heard of anything like that?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people that think we all died in 2012, like the Mayans were right, And I don't know what happened, but it does seem like, the Mayans were really strange. They were able to predict stuff hundreds or even thousands of years in the future. And, they had all this advanced calendar technology that is just unexplainable for, pagans living in the jungle. So,
right.
And it does seem like 2012 was a transition, because now, I don't know, a lot of people just feel like we're in a different place. Like the people all seem like NPCs, non-player characters.
That's what I'm saying.
It's so bizarre, man. Yeah, like, there's no doubt.
I felt different all of a sudden, and I don't know, and it freaked me out, man. It really did. It freaked me out, and
yeah.
That's where, like, the Mandela effect, that's where I started learning about these things is after that. Is like, am I going crazy? Do I need to be on some sort of medication like Xanax or something? Like, do I need...
Well, somebody said people told you need to go see someone. I would agree.
They did.
I would agree. I think that you should go see Jesus, because he's the master healer. He's the great physician. He's the lover of your soul. And he's the only one that can, what's the word I'm looking for? Regenerate is the term. Okay. So the New Age movement is preaching a concept of ascension through Gnosticism. In other words, you rise up in consciousness, you raise your vibration, and then you ascend to these different levels of consciousness, which is actually true. However, it's limited because it's not your universe. It's God's universe, and he does exist whether you acknowledge him or not. And what needs to take place is what's called regeneration. And this is where your nature is changed in a miracle event called being born again. And it's very simple. The thief on the cross is your template. The dude was a thief on the cross. Okay. He didn't try to reform himself. He didn't decide to become a good person. Mm-hmm. He was on the cross, and he probably heard the banter between Jesus and the guards and all this stuff. But he looked at Jesus and he knew this guy didn't belong there. And he said one thing to Jesus on the cross. He said, "Remember me when you go into your kingdom." That's all he said. And that was sufficient for Jesus, the King of Glory, to extend his scepter to this guy and say to him, "Today you will be with me in paradise." The born-again experience is an acknowledgement of who Jesus is. He's the King of the glory world, and he will grant you access as a son or a daughter if you humble yourself before him and you repent of all of your sins of being self-directed. Good deeds and bad deeds have to be repented of, because ultimately you have an expiration date on your forehead, and you cannot escape this realm without his help. You have to come to that realization that you are immortal and that you're in need of a savior, and he will grant it to you, but it's only on God's terms. It's not your universe. And I'm sorry, that might tick you off, but it's the story. And you should maybe look, is the way you're doing it working? Okay. Because for a lot of people, you can't even look yourself in the mirror. You got depression, you got addictions, you're hooked on porn and masturbation. You're hooked on chemicals. You're hooked on cursing. You're filled with bitterness. You're depressed. Whatever your problems are, you've tried personal development and you're still miserable. You can't sleep at night, and you got insomnia. You're scared. Whatever your or maybe you're up and you're not a down and out, you're up and out. Okay. You're on top of the world. You're doing drop shipping, 20 grand a month. You're rocking and rolling, but somehow you've reached the top and you're like, this is not what I expected.
And it's still incomplete.
That's right.
You still feel that void.
God will send leanness into your bones to draw you to himself. Because again, if I'm right, there is a creator. And this creator, what you're like to him is if you go to PetSmart, you decide, I want a puppy. You go to PetSmart and you see this beautiful little puppy and you just want to kiss him, right? You're not going there to get a plow mule that's going to provide you with some utility. Okay. Your dog is not going to mow the lawn for you or take out the garbage. He might protect the house or whatever, but that's not why you're buying him. You're buying him so you can kiss him on the forehead.
Yeah.
Okay. That's who you are to God. He loves you.
Unconditionally
loves you and wants to have a relationship with you. This is not about God, the judge, God, the ogre. This is about the Heavenly Father who, when you look at the prodigal son story, the father was waiting by the window when the son, who had squandered all his riches that the dad gave him on whores and partying, and then he finally was in the pigsty and he came to himself. He's like, well, at least my father's servants have a job and food. I can go home. Maybe he'll let me work for him. No, when that kid breached the hill, he came over the hill, the father got one look at who he was and he ran to him. And he jumped on him and kissed him. And he put the cloak on him and a ring and he threw a party. He said, sacrifice the fatted calf. We're going to have a party. That's who the Father is to you. He wants to kiss you. He wants to give you what it is you're looking for in the truther journey, which is fatness in your bones. A sound night's sleep. Peace I give to you. Not the world, peace the world gives you. That Jesus is the Prince of Peace. There is no peace for the wicked. So if you want peace, just all you got to do, sometime throughout the day, maybe that night, you slip off the side of your bed and just say his name. Jesus. He'll come. He'll make himself known to you.
Well, when that day happens, you'll be the first person I talk to about it.
Come on, man. Send me an email.
Yeah. Listen, I want to talk about a couple things. You'd mentioned the moon landing and how now I kind of see how you're going to go with this, because if you believe the Earth is flat, then you believe the moon is it's a construct, right, rather than a celestial object. So the moon landing would have had to been faked in order to push that narrative. Is this? I assume that's what you're going with.
Well, for me, it was the other way around. I found out the moon landing was fake, which means NASA's lying. And then I was presented with the idea that the Earth was flat. It never even dawned on me. And because I had already decided that NASA was lying about the moon landing, it was a lot easier for me to accept flat Earth, because that's the problem with flat Earth. It's such a big lie. Your brain resists the empirical evidence. So you're like a normie. You don't know and you don't want to know. You're not letting the empirical evidence in because it's a a priori argument. You come to the table convinced it can't be true, so therefore it isn't. But that's not proof.
Right. I understand, and that makes sense. So NASA, so NASA, I have seen evidence to suggest that NASA is absolutely editing photos before they release them. Absolutely. You cannot have the same cloud formations in 4 different pictures that are taken at 4 separate times. There's a statistical probability of 0% that you get the same exact cloud formation in 4 different pictures. It makes so NASA's clearly hiding something. And NASA, what do you think NASA really is?
Well, it was created from Project Paperclip, which
yeah, because clearly
the
it's not
Nuremberg trials. The Nuremberg trials only put 12 or 15 guys into, to jail or death. There was 50 though that came over here. Like Werner von Braun was one of them. He was a NASA Nazi scientist, and they then were given, payroll and permission to continue to pursue their stuff. And so NASA was actually created to perpetrate the heliocentric cosmology and a godless universe. Where Carl Sagan tells you there's billions and billions of stars. No, it makes you feel an insignificant speck. I mean, I used to always believe that. There's the Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across and 10,000 light years wide, and there's billions of galaxies, and then the space between the galaxies makes the galaxies look small. That's what they always told us. So therefore, you're an insignificant speck.
Right, and your life is just a blip on the cosmic scale.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
however,
and that.
But this is all you got to see. Here's a picture. I'll explain what it is. The picture of the Earth.
I'm gonna make you full
the
screen.
moon. It's called Earthrise.
Can you hold that up again?
Yeah, the picture of the Earth from the moon is the famous picture of the Earth from the moon for the first. A landing. But if you put this picture into Photoshop and change the contrast, you'll see a perfectly square artifact around the moon, which photography experts will tell you that proves it was fake. However, you don't even have to do that. This is what NASA told us, that this is the Earth, okay? And the Earth is 3 times larger than the moon. Okay, now here's a picture of the moon from the Earth. And they're the same size. So that wouldn't be possible, would it? And the orbit, the orbit that the Earth has is pretty much equidistant. It changes a little bit, but it wouldn't be because the Earth is that much farther away. This is proof that they're lying, because the Earth is 3 times larger than the moon. So it should be. It should be a little bit. Like, okay, that's how big the Earth should appear from the moon, not like this. Yeah.
Right. Wow, holy shit, I've never seen that.
Plus, there's no stars.
That makes
okay.
Sense. Yeah,
there's no
why
stars,
wouldn't there be?
And they tell you that the aperture of the camera can't capture the light of the stars. That's total nonsense. You could do it with your own phone at night.
I've never seen that.
Here's the picture with the artifact, the square artifact around it in Photoshop. Isn't that ironic that Photoshop tricks is what's tricked the normie, not us? They tell us we're tricked by Photoshop tricks, and it's actually them. But
wow.
There's a lot of examples of them lying. The monkey to the man is all of science lying to us, telling us that we evolved. But then you have Piltdown Man, which was a pig's nose and a human jawbone. And then they created a giant wax figure. And they paraded it through all the museums for a decade before it was proven that it was a hoax.
I've seen that before.
Then you've got this moon. There's a moon rock in a museum that NASA gave the museum that was turned out to be petrified wood. So that's another example of NASA lying through their teeth. Here's a picture of Neil Armstrong, and I'll say it for the audio only folks. You got a picture of Neil Armstrong. That's what they're telling us. This is his spacesuit, and the bottom of the shoes are flat. And then next to it is the famous picture of the footprint of the guy, the first footprint on the moon, and it's got ridges. So apparently, and all of those lead up to this one, which is Robert Simon from NASA admitted on the NASA website and in interviews that the picture of the big blue marble is a Photoshop compilation of 12 strips of data. And then he added color and clouds. Okay, it's actually not a picture of the Earth from space. And they're admitting that now because people like you and I are forcing them into the open.
Right.
That it's actually Photoshop. So again, it's the normie that has been tricked by Photoshop tricks and not us. And if you look at the picture, you can see that the clouds are cut and paste, and there's exact duplicates
Yeah.
all through the
So
cloud structure.
this is what I'm talking about.
It's really obvious.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier. It's like there's way too many of them. Like it's just so clearly overt. But if you were a quote unquote normie, you would just breeze right past that. You wouldn't look for that.
Well, what's worse, it's not that they're not even looking. You can show them these pictures, and they'll just sit there and take it, and then they'll say, well, what difference does it make? I still have to go to work, don't I?
Yeah, and that is the old that oh my god, that drives me insane. Because it's like, yeah, okay, we all have to go to work tomorrow, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't take these, like, these are things that we need to talk about, and we need to, like, I don't care how much power or influence you wield, you do not have the authority or the moral whatever you want to call it, moral obligation. You should, I mean, that is a crime against humanity to keep this information a secret.
Yeah. Well, it's life-threatening too, because I really sat back and I thought about, what are people really saying when they say, what difference does it make? I still have to go to work. Because I've heard that 100 times.
Oh,
personally.
me too.
Okay, so let me tell you let me unpack this for you. This statement typically comes after you've peppered them with 5, 6, 7 different empirical observations like I just gave, right? And so what they're feeling is they're feeling the heat. They're feeling that there's really meat on the bones of these arguments. They don't have an answer. And so it's becoming more and more difficult for them to just flat out tell you you're crazy and it can't be. So what they do is they take a fallback position and they offer this statement up. What difference does it make if you're right, they're saying. Okay, so they're essentially, it's like a tacit agreement that you may be onto something. Okay, they're sort of waving the white flag a little bit, but they're not really admitting that they believe you. Okay, so it's sort of manipulation. And so, because if you do believe the earth is flat, it does matter to you. It is a life-changing experience to find out that the entire data sphere, including the media, is lying to you. Here's a picture of, I just saw this. Okay, here's a picture of a building in Iowa that collapsed. Okay, and I'll explain it. There's a building in Iowa that was shown on Fox News, and it collapsed in the middle. The exact same building was just used by CNN, saying that this is a building that was hit by drones in Ukraine.
Yeah, this is a huge problem right now, especially in like the Hamas and Israeli war. Misinformation and disinformation are running rampant through the media.
Yeah.
And the media, I mean, we have these, and no offense, the older generation, people that are older than I am, I'm 30 years old, and like my parents' age, my mom is no longer here, but like my father still has cable. He watches the news. I mean, he gets the newspaper. That's how he assimilates his position, right? He's like old school. Because back in the day, you could quote unquote trust the newspaper, trust the news, yada yada yada. That's their argument. Is back in the day you can trust. Well, now I don't care. Whatever's happened has happened. You cannot, whether it's Fox News or CNN or any of these other programs, they are they're perpetuating the narrative of, I think, how many people is it in the United States? What, 13 people control all the media?
Oh, well, no, it's down to about 4 companies control about 90% of all the media outlets.
Okay.
4 corporations.
So I had that wrong. So there's 4 corporations that run 90% of the United States, the United States, and maybe even
the
global,
world. The world,
global, global media. So
yeah.
What is essentially being said there is we are getting the information from one side and one side only. And we're getting the information from the top 1% who want to keep being the top 1%, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to promote individualism. No, they're going to promote factionalism, and they're going to pit you against each other, and they're going to set up rallies on the street here and then an opposing rally on the other side of the street. I mean, that is what it's come to, is people are being manipulated on a grand scale.
Yeah, the media is really effective at
they've never had this power before, because the internet, before the internet, you couldn't control the masses in a way that you can now. I mean, our data is more valuable than the person itself. That's the world that we live in right now.
I mean, the problem, get back to the book and how difficult this is. Here's a picture of the space shuttle astronauts, the one that blew up. There was 7 of them. Challenger, right. 6 out of 7 of them supposedly have identical twins.
I know. I've seen this before.
Because you can go and find these people. They all have cushy university jobs now. One of them is, I forget, but they all have these, $250,000 a year salaries at a university. And people have cornered them, and they told them, "Oh yeah, I'm their identical twin." And 6 out of 7 have identical twins. I'm like, yeah, right.
Wasn't it even the teacher had one?
Yeah, she's right here.
Like
and you look at the pictures. You can Google it. Just put picture of Challenger twins or whatever. It'll come up, and they're identical. I mean, it's the same person.
It's so it is. And listen, I hate to be the one to because I didn't know that we were going to go there right now, but I hate to say it, but that is one that I've questioned. Very much so questioned. Now, what's funny is we're going to end with this, but I want to talk a little bit about Wernher von Braun, because he, on his deathbed, said that the last card that they were going to play is the false flag alien invasion.
That's right.
You alluded to that earlier.
Yep.
Now, can you expand upon that?
This has been a long time in the works. They really need something big to bring the people under the central planner's control. And so, just like with the Patriot Act, they need our compliance, because there's only a couple thousand of them and there's 8 billion of us. They need us to go along with it. So it's the Hegelian dialect: problem, action, solution. So they make the problem that then they offer the solution for, which is you have to give up more and more of your rights. And eventually it will be, you have to take the mark in order to buy or sell. Revelation 13 or whatever. And so you're already seeing that with the mask of the beast, where you couldn't buy or sell without coming in without a mask, or, taking the shot, right? So
and you had to have a COVID card.
Yeah, so we're close. We're very close to them implementing. Now, the difference will be when the mark of the beast is actually rolled out, not only will you have to take the mark to be able to buy or sell, transact, because you'll have a social credit score like they have in China and stuff.
Yep.
But you will have to deny Christ. You will have to literally deny Christ somehow to get the mark. Because once you take the mark, you're damned, period. Boom. You never go to heaven if you take the mark.
Oh, no.
So if you get nothing else out of this, do not take the mark.
What is the mark, though? How are we going to know what the mark is?
Well, it says in Scripture on mark of the beast. It says very clearly that people will be given a mark. It will be on the right hand or the forehead, and when you receive that, then you'll be able to continue to buy or sell. Without the mark, you won't be able to buy or sell.
Okay,
And
so this could be anything.
For that now, all the talking heads when they rolled out the mandate, they were like, these people are a threat to society, and if they don't want to, do their part, then they don't deserve to participate in society's benefits. That was the narrative.
Right. If you didn't take the vaccine, you were a threat to the overall societal health. Like, you were the bad person if you didn't take the vaccine, which I didn't.
Good.
So,
I'm glad to hear that.
I didn't. I actually, I'll admit it now because we're past it, but I have a fake COVID card because that's how, that's how I chose to do it. I'm not getting this vaccine, but I still have to navigate the world around me. So I'm going to do what I have to do. And I did what I had to do.
Yeah,
so
that's what we all got to do.
Yeah.
All right, Revelation 13 answers your question. He also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark.
So they're going to try to, and okay, so where does if this happens, right? If this happens and that becomes reality, whether it's a social credit score, it's some chip in your hand or your chip in your brain, because those are the two places that I'm thinking, right? Which would, that will allow them to like scan you personally, pull up your social credit score. It'll be touted out as technology. And
Yeah.
I mean, we see this with like things like Neuralink and Elon Musk. I can only imagine.
Sorry. Keep going. I got somebody at the door real quick. I'll be right back. Keep going.
Okay. So whether it's Elon Musk and Neuralink, or some sort of technological achievement that we get to, where all of a sudden our phone is embedded into us, right? And we, all we have to do is wear like this like pair of glasses, and then it shows the world to us, and we can pull up our messages and do all this crazy stuff. But the one thing is you have to get this little implant. And by doing so, you would be getting what you're saying is the mark of the beast. I just created a marker.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
It's a delivery. Okay, so yes, to what you just said, and we don't believe that the shot is the mark, because it's very clear that it says it has to be on the right hand or the forehead, and you could still buy or sell. So What we've gone through so far is not the mark, but I believe it's a movement towards.
Right, but so what I said was, now say the day comes where the next iPhone, let's call it iPhone 20, you get the iPhone, but you also have to get this little implant, right? The iPhone 20 is an implant, and then you get a pair of glasses, and all your shit's there, and you can, it's like this new technological achievement, and that's how it's touted, right? And that's what they roll out. The only thing is, guys, again, we have to get a little implant in you on your right hand, or you could do it in your here. I don't know. It seems like either one's acceptable. So right hand is, I guess, I don't know. I don't know how they would do it, but we see it like with Neuralink and Elon Musk, right? So in order to take advantage of that technology, you're going to have to get this thing. And that's clearly where this is going. The iPhone is getting smaller and smaller, bigger, or, it's eventually we're going to be at a crossroads where we merge with technology or we don't. I think we're headed towards merging with it, especially with AI and that coming. Now, could this be a way for them to hide in plain sight by doing that? Because then it's only a short trip from you getting an implant for a technological reason to now you have a social credit score. It's all tied to this microchip that's in your hand, and they can basically shut you off or on. And then we talk about
it
UBI.
won't be an actual chip. They went to DARPA about 10 years ago, and they said, we need you to come up with a technology to chip people without having to do surgery. So they created a hydrogel and the microdot technology, the nanotech. And so the patent on that is 666. I kid you not.
No way. I need proof.
What's that?
I'm going to need proof on that one. But if that's true, that is, I'll keel over if that's.
Oh yeah. I have it on my computer. I can find it. So what the nanotech does has 33 different functionalities, which is another significant number for the Lucy's. And that, by the way, is the latitude and longitude of Mount Hermon, where the fallen angels. Well, 33 is the longitude and latitude of Mount Hermon, where the fallen angels came down in the book of Genesis, chapter 6. Anyway.
Interesting.
The technology has 33 different functionalities, and they put this in your body, and they can trigger them with the frequency. So they can create the zombie apocalypse by pushing a button. You know, they can just off you. And there's actually patents that interact with the brain once this mRNA thing is in you that will actually allow them to put voices in your head. And then it gets really sci-fi, where there's a cryptocurrency component to it. And so the money that you have will be inside of you. And if they can read your intentions and your thoughts and all this, and if you get out of line, then they'll just shut your money off. But there won't be any chip. It's in you by the nanotech.
Right. So and I see. Okay. So it won't even be that overt. It's not even that overt where you go willingly buy it.
Right, because the nanotech it's an artificially intelligent parasite. It's self-replicating, self-healing, self-duplicating. If you look at it under a microscope in people's blood, there's geodesic figures that are forming, and it's really sci-fi stuff. And then
Did you see the stuff that was coming out of people's veins? Like this,
Morgellons?
The stringy stuff that was coming out after they got the vaccine?
Yeah, Morgellons they're called.
Yeah, that really fucking freaks me out.
You know what's trippy about? They're like the size of hairs, but if you look at them under a microscope, they'll have a perfect square with a letter in it, like the letter C inside of a square. So they're total nanotech things. They look like hairs, but they're actually nanotech.
Okay, I'll have to look more into that one. But yeah. So I'm again, like I said, I'm not, with the mRNA vaccinations, and I'm not sure about, whether they did it or not, or what they did with nanotech. I don't know. I'm not, I'd have to see more evidence, up front. But it definitely wouldn't surprise me if that's something that's like being worked on for, like, this was a trial, and then because they're already setting us up for the next one, right? They're already getting us ready for the next pandemic. Like, it's not about when. It's not about if. It's about when. And maybe that's when they roll out some of. I don't know. But all I know is that there's clearly something that is not right. I can feel it in my bones. Conspiracy theorist is a term that was coined by the CIA. Right? The CIA is created after, there's just so many rabbit holes at the CIA, because, like, its formation, just the military industrial complex in general. We were warned about it very hard by Eisenhower, who had really lost control of it at that point. And from there, now look at us. We're all of our politicians are in bed with these companies, and they leave government, and then they get cushy board jobs on these private companies. It's so clear that there's a problem. Yet people want to just complain about Trump or what the Kardashians are doing. So I mean, I'd love to have you back on the show soon, so we can get more into it. This is definitely a starting ground. But I'm really interested. Again, we may not agree on everything, but I think just having the conversation is healthy. I think it's something that we have to do. We don't have to agree on everything, and that's how the world used to be. All of a sudden, though, it's not like that anymore.
That's for
If
sure.
you disagree with me, like you should, with the new world, it's like if you disagree with me, I'm going to try to cancel you, and it's really weird.
Well, yeah, it's by design. It's social programming. They've basically been able to convince people that disagreeing with you is an act of violence. Therefore, I'm justified in being violent against you,
Right?
Because
Right.
you disagree with me.
Right. And then they take your livelihood away. Like some of these people that get canceled, like you're taking their livelihood away from them. Now they can't feed their families. Now, like you're just some guy on the internet, right? Or some whatever, some person on the internet. You're a handle, a name, you're a data point, and it's really concerning to me, like the direction that society is heading in. So I think there's more to this, and I think there's many more conversations that we can have about it. I'd love to talk about the CIA and their involvement in many programs that shouldn't have existed but do, that people don't know about. So maybe we could set something up very soon.
Absolutely, yeah. Just reach out, man, and just hit me back if you want to fill a slot. I'll be looking forward to coming back and talk to you again for sure.
Yeah, you're a really fun guy to talk to, John. And where can people get your book, The Conspiracy Theorist Survival Guide? I'm sure it's on Amazon.
Yep, it's on Amazon. You can get it in an audio version or a paperback, and you can find it from my website, which is wakeuporelse.com. And my YouTube channel is one word. It's Wake Up or Else. And we do a biblical analysis of the Mandela effect.
And all of the links for John will be in the description below for anyone who wants to check out what he's got. And if you want to explore him and his work further, you can do that. Guys, we want to say thank you from Total Disclosure to John and for coming on today. It's always such a pleasure to have someone who's open-minded, who like to have a conversation and not, let the political things get in the way of it, right? So much love to you, and I really look forward to having you back on.
Awesome, Todd. Appreciate you. Thanks, guys, for listening. Have a great day. We'll talk soon.
All right, guys. And to everyone, make sure to leave a review. I can't say that enough. It really helps, and it's free. Right? It's super free. So on Apple or Spotify, you can rate the show, leave 5 stars, and a written review. It helps so much. And I'm sure John knows all about this. If you're on YouTube, for both of us, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and click that bell notification so you get notifications every time new videos are dropped. Because this is how we keep the messages going, and this is how we keep the status quo from falling into the wrong to the wrong hands and the wrong side. So for everyone, we'll see you next time. Goodbye, world.